What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Payne. Welcome back to video 2 of 2 as promised. Here it is. This time, guys, instead of talking about team formations and what formations are best to use within PvP and PvE content, we're actually going to do a pretty thorough breakdown of the top characters to use within each element. Now, this is not a tier list, guys. I want to make this clear. There's an actual tier list team that I'm a part of. Out of respect for them, they've worked really hard on creating a tier list that's going to encompass pretty much every game mode out there and every character that's currently available in the game, and rate them properly. I will be reviewing that and giving my thoughts on it as well. So I did not want to step on anyone's toes or hurt anyone's feelings. So instead of doing the tier list, guys, I'm going to give you guys a preliminary look at what characters you should focus on and what characters are going to be end game characters that you want to pour your resources and time into. Okay, and we're going to go element by element, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a breakdown about the character and explain what my thoughts are and why they're there. Okay, as you can see, I have a lot of characters leveled up. A lot of them have been tested, tried. I started with beginner game, middle game, and end game, and right now my main focus is end game. So the characters I'm going to be listing are going to take you throughout all of those phases, right? As a beginner, as an intermediate, and as an end game content player. These characters are going to last you out throughout the entire game practically. Okay, so let's start off with water. The water is probably one of the most unique elements in this game, as they provide you a plethora of characters that have different things that they do, and they do them pretty damn well. Okay, so first character a lot of you guys are going to know about because she's on the loading screen. One of the admins are named after her, and she's got one of the earliest skins that you can actually purchase, and that is none other than Celestial Spear Vaya. Now, Vaya is unique in a lot of reasons. Okay, number one, Vaya is a ranger who can do a lot of different unique things for your team. So number one, she is an AoE damage dealer. All right, so from the get-go, she'll apply decreased damage and decreased crit rate. So that makes people who hit hard hit a lot less, right? And not only that, but it also does an AoE damage to the front row. So it's good to take out people who don't use tanks. Now, a lot of people in this game are still not using tanks. If you have a tank in the front row and you're using, and this applies to you, it won't really hurt that much, right? But if you are using the T row with 3 characters up front, and some of them are like warriors and assassins, this will do a massive decrease in their damage output. So Vaya is really good for that. She does a great AoE damage there with good debuffs. She also have Prohibit Heal, which is 100% heal reduction, guys, which is absolutely incredible because a lot of them do healing reduction. Don't get them mistaken. Prohibit is 100% reduction is only 50%, right? So you can still get a heal off, and the actual damage is not bad. Now, if you get her exclusive weapon, this damage goes up by 3%, so single target damage actually increases by 3%, which is really good. And her potential level 10, which is the awakening stage after 10 stars, increases the attack of the extra attack to 140% rather than 120, so you get an extra 20% attack. So again, the Prohibit Heal is really good. The buffs are of course fantastic. All these core characters have them, especially the Rangers. They have the same one. And then lastly, right over here, after the round ends, she recovers HP equal to 80% of her self-attack for 2 heroes with the lowest HP, so she provides you a little bit of a heal, as well as providing herself a damage increase of 10%. So overall, guys, like I mentioned, does quite a bit of everything. So a good debuffer, a great heal reduction, especially people who run 2 healers. This is a great way to stop them from living. And then of course, giving yourself a heal for 2 of the heroes with the lowest HP, plus buffing herself. So Vaya, definitely a must-have in the water team, guys. So definitely go for that. Howling Wind is another really good character. Terastoya is a character who can take out rows super quickly. Her main focus is hitting opponents within the same row twice and freezing them. So if you take a look at her special, she channels the Dragon Blood and thrusts her spear, dealing 220% damage to the front row with the 24% chance to freeze. Sorry. So if there's 2 people lined up in that row, both those people in those rows are getting hit. So if she's lined up on the left and there's 2 people on the left side, that row is getting hit twice, right? And the reason why I say twice is she'll do this, and then her second skill, she'll actually see here, sorry guys, she sees the weak points, and then after a basic attack or a rage attack, she makes an additional attack, inflicting 91% damage to the enemies in the front row. Basic attacks and range attacks can trigger this once per round, so it can happen pretty often. So she can do 222% plus an extra 91%. That is a lot of damage coming through, guys. So again, really good damage dealer, and the ability to freeze always helps out as well. Of course, having the buff to herself. And then lastly, this one here, adding the additional damage to frozen units, which if you put her on a water team, you're going to get frozen units. And then she also applies an additional armor shred effect to the target when using basic attack. So you can really do a ton of damage with her with adding armor shred to that. So Howling Wind, for sure, a amazing DPS. So those two are big DPSs right there. Baby Shark, as funny as the name is, brings a lot to the table as a debuffer, okay? And a lot of people sleep on her, and you guys should not. I've been testing her on a different account and love her. So Baby Shark's main thing is she is a debuffer who steals the attack power of the target that she hits and lasts for 2 rounds, which is really damn cool. So as you can see here, she does 310% attack to the enemy with the highest attack, so she focuses on whoever is the highest damage dealer there. Then she also uses the White Spirit Shark to steal 20% of that attack power. So that highest attack power now lost 20%, right? Which is huge for two rounds. And then not only that, but she has the ability to eat and devour. Basic attacks other than counterattacks will inflict 80% of attack and damage to 3 random enemies with a 40% chance to slow the target. Slow is really big. She's one of the only characters that I know that I use that has the slow ability, which makes faster opponents attack obviously slower, which gives you the edge to attack first. So that is a big thing, guys. 40% chance is nothing to scoff at in this game. That's actually pretty good, and if you add CC trinkets to her, she'll be doing crowd control quite often. So as you can see here, she brings quite a bit. We look at the buff here, 20 and 40% when you get it up to the 3-star. And then of course right over here she adds damage reduction to herself. Now the potential awakening for her is pretty massive. I'm going to go to the archives and find her real quick here, guys, so I can show you her potential awakening, which I actually should have done with the other one as well too. But her basic attacks now have a 30% chance to do heal reduction, and then have a chance to freeze on potential 20, and then of course increasing her attack by 10%. So once you get her potentials up, she becomes even better debuffer and a better damage dealer. So really good unit. Don't sleep on her just because her name is Baby Shark and she's a kid. Will do quite a bit for you in this game. So those are probably the big 3 I would focus on. There are 2 honorable mentions. I will mention them. Sheila Parda is really good. The only thing is, as a tank, I don't find her quite as well-rounded. So she's good in a freeze team. So if you plan to make a water team, it's almost a must-have to have her, because her basic attack has a 100% freeze, and she gives herself a shield. So that freeze, if you have like Terrastoya who on that team, she'll do way more damage to those freeze units, right? So having her is great. She has great damage reduction and a shield. Right over here, she does damage reduction to herself, so she reduces damage taken by 8%, and it lasts for 2 rounds. Stack up to 3 times, which is really good. And then of course, as long as I breathe, I can fight. She gives herself damage reduction by 10%, and then basic attacks have a 20% chance to freeze enemies. So additional freeze, developers, your spelling's off here. Let's just say enemies, not enemies. But yeah, so again, she's a great freeze debuffer and a good damage dealer. Not a damage dealer. She's a good tank to take damage. Unfortunately, she just doesn't bring enough utility for the team. So that's why I said honorable mention. She's not amazing. She's not the best tank out there, but she's good if you plan to use a water team. Okay. And then the other honorable mention, of course, is going to be the assassin over here, the Might of Parda. Both of them are good characters. Like, the good thing with them is they work well together, right? Because with her, like with Connie here, she actually ends up hitting a random enemy in the back row, so you can prioritize. She prioritizes frozen enemies. So if you have a frozen enemy by using Terrastoya in the back row, she'll attack that enemy and then shatter, and then shatter does way more damage. All right, that's 540% of attack damage to all enemies who have the frozen effect. So if you have a whole team of frozen people, she's going to destroy that team. So, but it's very niche, right? It's very dependent on frozen, which kind of sucks, but she still does pretty good damage. Before taking action, she has a 50% chance to remove frozen and stun effects on herself, so it's really hard to CC her. So bringing her in PvP actually could benefit you if you're lacking a good damage dealer. Of course, her buffs as an assassin, and then lastly, she has this over here. Her basic attack is converted into charge attack, increasing damage over an X rage skill by 80%, and that can stack up to 2 times, so making it 160%. This again is really, really important. I don't use her very often only because I don't really run a freeze team, but if you do run a freeze team and it's a niche team, she's definitely on top of the list of characters you should build. I would probably replace Vea with her, to be quite honest with you, if you run a freeze team. But those are essentially it. So those are the 5 characters there. The top 3 again, I don't recommend really Daughter of the Sea as a healer. There's way better healer options out there, so I kept her out of there. And the rest of them are just food, guys. The rest are food, okay? So those are the top 3 you want to focus on: Terrastoya, Vea, and Baby Shark. And then if you decide to run a freeze team, take out Vea, put in Connie, and then and take out Baby Shark and put in, or I mean, Baby Shark you can keep in if you have her at Awaken 2, but for now, if you don't, put in Shield Apart and use her as a tank so you have more frozen enemies to attack with Connie, and Connie will just blow up the entire team. Alright, there is the Frost team. Let's go over to Fire. Now, Fire, unfortunately, is the most lacking of the elements. It's really hard to give these guys a lot of credit for endgame because there really aren't any units that are endgame units here except for one, and that's probably the best support damage dealer in the game, and that is Marlock. So I'm going to give him the #1 spot of who you should focus on your Fire team. What makes Marlock amazing is the fact that he has, first off, he's a warrior, so he has great HP and defense so he can survive, but he gives you the best buffs for your party. It's absolutely insane what he can do for you, okay? So first off, if you look at his special, he provides a shield to all allies. There's also a 100% chance to apply critical lifesteal effect on all allies as well. So what critical lifesteal is, guys, it allows every time you hit a crit, and essentially your crit damage, you convert 20% of that damage to HP. When you get up there to the top end of the game, crit damage is probably two of the most important stats for damage. And adding this lifesteal to it, and your own lifesteal, if you have a lifesteal built in, combines the two, making you recover HP and stay at full HP. And that shield is nothing to scoff at because it's the effect is based on his max HP, and he has a ton of HP, right? So that's really cool. Marlock's second skill here is he gives you damage up for 2 rounds, and then he also increases crit rate. So not only does he give you critical damage lifesteal, but it gives you crit rate up, so you can actually do more crits, which increases your ability to lifesteal. So this here is like absolutely bonkers for DPS. Adding him to any DPS team will amplify the DPS 3-fold. I promise you. Just put him in there and watch it happen. A lot of people are mistaken at the fact that they thought it was only for Fire, but no, it's literally for any units you have. It does not have to be Fire, it's all allies, okay? Then of course he has his buff as a self buff, 80% and 40% for attack. And then lastly over here, this is actually very unique. Marlock uses Fear and Protection to protect himself and reduces damage by 10%, again taking less damage. But more importantly, upon entering the battle, every Fire hero you have in the lineup, he gains 2 speed. And that is a lot in this game, guys. So he can end up becoming the fastest character in the game based on how many Fire characters you have in the lineup. So Marlock, for sure, guys, 100% should be your main focus as a Fire unit. Some other units I could recommend here. She's fairly new. Not a lot of people have tested her. I have, luckily. Scarlet Velvet is amazing with a burn team, okay, and she can literally blow up an entire opponent by doing this. So first off, so Moose is her name, of course. Alicia's K-Bombs, inflicting 131% of the attack to all enemies. If the target is affected by burn, which most of the time if you're running a Fire team they are, then for each stack of burn, inflict an additional 16% of attack and damage. If there are more than 4 stacks of burn, then there's a 60% chance to stun. This is crazy. So if you run Ani, if you run Dragon Princess, if you run her, Kin, and Marlock, you guys are this is gonna happen very often, okay? So again, the damage increase is pretty substantial, but not only that, she adds probably the best crowd control in the game, which is a stun. Her second skill here is her basic attack will deal 200% damage and apply 1 stack of burn. As you can see here, the burn will stack up to 5 times, which is really good. And then of course the 40% and 80% for being a mage. And then lastly, she has the ability to do this. Increases Moose's damage by 10%. After entering combat, the first enemy is marked with the Crimson Heartbeat, which syncs with the enemy's heartbeat. At the same time, gain 1 stack of soul. So what does Crimson Heartbeat do? Explodes upon death, dealing 70% plus 10% times burn stacks to all enemies. After the round ends, decreases HP, and you know what burn does, obviously. So that is crazy, guys. Considering how much burn stacks can occur in this game, up to 5 times, obviously. And then if she kills somebody and that opponent that has the Crimson Heartbeat dies, you're doing a massive amount of damage of AoE. She's probably one of the best AoE damage dealers in this game, and is unfortunately one of the hardest ones to get at the moment. But so if you run a fire team, she's definitely on the list of top units to do. Okay, so this is hard now. I'm gonna have a hard time saying this, but I love Dragon Princess, so she would be my next in line. But unfortunately, she falls off for us right now pretty early because crit rate and crit damage is not something we possess a lot of, right? She is good for this. When she takes her turn, she has Dragon's Might, which is CC immunity for 2 turns, which means you can't get stunned, frozen, or any of that stuff. She bypasses all crowd control, and she's immune to it for 2 rounds, which is great. She also inflicts 360% of attack to a single target, which is a pretty high percentage. And and it's true damage, right? If the opponent has burn, which in most cases they will. If you're running a fire team, or if you're running her, because her basic attacks and her second skill allow to do burns. If it's a warrior in the front line, which most of the time it is, right? And that warrior is affected by burn, you apply an additional 120% attack in true damage. So what is true damage? True damage essentially ignores all defenses, all shields, anything that essentially gives that tank or that unit any form of resistance or defense. It bypasses all that. It's essentially pure damage, bypassing all protection, which is really, really good. And I love her for that. So she's great for that. And then her second skill, after performing a basic attack, there's a 7% chance, which is super high, to summon Dragon Soul Strike, inflicting damage to all enemies equal to her attack times 60. Additionally, there's a 70% chance to add a stack of burn, okay? I believe with her potential awakening, that can actually go 100%, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it does become 100% with burn. And then enhanced effect, Dragon's Might cannot be dispelled. It also increases crit rate by 10%. So that Dragon's Might is the one that is the crowd control one, where she's immune. It also gives her 10% crit rate. And then crit damage is her last one. So she's all about crit rate and crit damage, guys. So you definitely want to stack her with as much of that as possible. She works so well with Marlock, like, because he gives crit damage and lifesteal and crit rate up. Added to her current crit rate up, she actually gets up to close to 50% on base. And then of course this is right here, Divine Might, increasing crit rate by 20% and crit damage by 20%. This is what I was talking about. If you get it to this point, with Marlock and his buff and her buffs, she gets crit rate, I think, base at 50% starting, which makes her a amazing damage dealer. But unfortunately, because of the lack of crit gear at the moment in the game, she kind of falls off. Not to say that she won't be back up in the future, but right now she is down there. All right, there really aren't any honorable mentions in my opinion after this, guys. Those are the top 3 I would focus on. Julius, not a fan of. He's just too niche. I mean, he can give you a burn. He has a silly resurrect for 1 round, which is pointless to me. And Ani's actually pretty good. The thing with Ani I don't like that much is DP, I think, is just a better unit. So, I mean, between the two of them, I would probably pick DP still. His design, though, is hands down my favorite design of the game. Like, this guy looks so badass. But there you guys have it. Those are the top 3 units, guys, I'd focus on in Fire. Going on to Wind. Now, Wind is crazy. Wind is wild. Okay, so Wind has a lot of really good units. It's super hard to choose the top 3 here, but I'm gonna go ahead and do so. So that's going to be Lord of Time as a healer, because she is used all over the game, from end game to middle to beginning. Dawn, the Dragon Master, Master Dragon, best tank in the game, by far the best tank in the game. So those 2 there, and this is where the toss-up happens. Okay, it's really, these 3 characters are all super unique in their own way. I'm gonna probably go with either Rose or Endless Storm. It's up to you on which one, but I will say this, they work really well together, so it doesn't hurt having them. But if you're looking for a massive AoE unit, then Tempest Dragon is also really good. So let's talk a little bit about the Panda and why I love him so much. This tank here does it all, okay? First off, he has something called Master Dragon Shield, which can absorb 8% of his HP, and he provides it to 2 units. His potential 1 gives it to 3 units, so that's really good. It also stacks with other shields. Also, he increases, he has a 100% counter attack, and whenever he counters, he also has the ability to increase his own damage. Okay, sorry, has a chance to increase damage effect. He gives it to the allies who have the shield. His counter attack, though, also allows him to do bleeds. Every time he does a bleed, it stacks and it takes away HP every round for that opponent. But not only that, he does something called Intervene that nobody else has. As a tank, this is absolutely key. Intervene takes 50% of the damage that's done to other heroes and puts it onto him, and when he gets hit, he does a counter attack. So every Intervene provides a counter, right? So keep that in mind. It's absolutely crucial as a tank to be able to do this, and the fact that he counters every time and adds a bleed stack makes bleed teams completely viable with this. Okay, so there you have it there. And then of course he's got the 80% HP increase and 40% by attack, and then lastly he has a damage reduction to himself by 10%, and also applies Deep Wound, which reduces the healing by 50% and increases the damage taken by bleeds by 50%. That right there, guys, for a bleed team is absolute nuts. It's crazy to have that buff. And then if you look at a potential awakening, as I mentioned, he gives the increased damage applies to 3 targets plus the shield, and he does 20% damage reduction when he does intervening all allies, which is crazy. And then he gives himself another 10% damage reduction when you get him to the 3rd awakening, which makes him easily the best tank in the game. So #1 tank, guys, if you're going to focus on any tank, should be him. All right, he's also the easiest tank to focus on, to be quite honest. All right, moving on to Lord of Time. Now I like the character, but Twins does it for me, so I don't really need to focus on Lord of Time, but I know a lot of people love her, and there's a reason for it. #1, she has the highest percentage heal in the game, and she also does a resurrect. Okay, so keep that in mind. So that's already awesome in itself. She also does a mass ally reduction, a recovery of HP to 2 allies by 230%, and she targets specifically the lowest percentage of HP. This is not random, and she also increases the damage of those allies by 8%. So that's pretty damn good, and that can stack up to three layers. HP and attack increase, of course, and then lastly Merlin's healing is imbued with the Might of Time, increasing healing by 20%, so she heals even more now when using rage skills. First purifies a negative effect and then applies a shield. That's pretty crazy. So taking away debuffs and then adding a shield makes her an amazing purifier, and people who use Lilith, she becomes kind of a crux. So Lord of Time, definitely a really good unit. Her potential, of course, gives increased damage up to the to the unit, and then her Blessing of Time enhances effect now up to 3 targets rather than 2, and then this one here just increases damage reduction for making her a little tank here. Okay, so Lord of Time, really good. Now I'm gonna choose my favorite of the 3 here. It's a really big toss-up, guys, but I really like Endless Storm. Rose is really good too. Like, you can't go wrong with her. If you use Dawn, any of these units are viable, to be quite honest, but I'm going to go with Endless Storm. And the reason why I like Endless Storm is because she's an execute unit. So first off, what she does is she does 360% attack damage to the enemy with the lowest HP, which to me is crucial, guys. So if you want to take out, so people don't get healed often, right? You want to take those units out quick. If the target has a bleed effect with a Master Dragon on the team, everyone's going to have bleed. She increases the damage to 540%. That's wild how much she hits, and it's the lowest target HP, so that target is done, like gone, evaporated. The second skill here is her basic attacks prioritize the enemy with the lowest HP again, and then there's a 100% chance to apply Armor Shred and Bleed. So if you don't have Master Dragon on your team or another bleed unit, she'll cover that herself anyways. It's unfortunate though, because you want it to go last so other people can apply bleed, and then she can just execute them using her special right away. But she has the ability to do Armor Shred and Bleed anyways on her own. Of course, increase HP by 40, attack by 80, just a very similar mage thing. And then lastly, she has the ability to increase her damage by 10%, and her rage skill now inflicts heal reduction on the target. If the target is killed, then she recovers 20% of that max HP. So this is why I love Endless Storm. Like, she is an absolute badass. So those are my top 3 guys. Like I mentioned to you before, Rose and Tempest Dragon are all very good units. So you can't go wrong with Wind. They're probably the strongest natural tri element. So all of them work well, but in my opinion, guys, those 3 will take you the furthest in the game. All right, going on to Light and Dark. Now, Light, I'm gonna cover the top 3, but there's actually 4 that I really like, and one is a dark horse because everybody thinks he sucks or it sucks, but it doesn't. So Grail, 100% guys, should be focusing on Grail. First off, great AoE damage dealer, but also a chance to stun all enemies. You can't go wrong with that. It's just what it's, she's built for PvP, she's built for PvE. Not only that, but her basic attacks All right, all of her basic attacks inflict damage to 102 of self attack to all enemies. So she pretty much does AoE across the board, and that is cleave teams are always going to be the top PvP team. So from PvP, she absolutely shines. And not only that, but when using her raid skill, she applies weakened and shredded armor, and also gives herself 10% damage increase. And then her awakenings give her the ability to resist crowd control. That's crazy, by 30%, that's a lot. So no more freezing, no more stunning on her. It's way harder to land those now. And then not only does her elemental rage enhance, apply a random effect of poison, armor, shred, and weaken. And then lastly, enchantment of elements increases her damage by 10%. Grail is an absolute beast. Her exclusive weapon's great, and she's got a wicked skin, so you cannot go wrong with that. Okay, next up we're going to talk about is the Super Twins. What can be said about these? Top tier healer, top tier damage dealer, top tier everything, just like an absolute juggernaut of a character. And the reason why, guys, is so first off, like I said, they do 102% attack to all enemies, so pretty much very similar to like someone like Grail who does 131%. I mean, it's 29% off, but still really good for a support unit. If the enemy has buffs, this is what's the really cool thing about it. A random buff will be converted to Seal of Doom. After using the skill, if the Lucky Smile is learned, switch to Ella, okay? So what Mark of Misfortune does is, after being attacked 3 times, Seal of Doom will randomly apply a weaken, poison, or armor shred debuff and remove that person's actual buff and convert it to one of these. So she removes buffs and adds Seal of Doom instead. And then her second skill recovers Ella and Bella's equal to 360% of their attack, while at the same time adds Lucky Seal on self. When Ella's healing overflows, the excess amount converts into HP shield. So she does a mass AoE heal to everybody, and then if anyone is excess healed, so above max HP, they get a shield based on how much remaining HP they have. So now she's providing a heal, a damage deal, a buff remove, and a shield at the same time, which is crazy because everybody can get a shield. And the cool thing about this shield is it can actually stack with other shield effects. All right, so like Dragon Masters or Pardas or Marlocks, right? It's wild. And then of course the 40% HP and then 80% attack. And then lastly, once she dies, this is the beast of a thing. Everyone is revived on your team that's already dead, and restores 400% of HP of Ella and Bella's attack as HP. At the same time, Bella enters crazed state, increasing her damage done by 20%. Like, what else can you say about this character? It literally does everything. Absolutely everything, okay? So keep that in mind. Potential also gives speed by 5%, which is good. You want her to be fast so she can do a heal right from the get-go and give you shields. And then if Ella is alive, an extra buff will be converted to Seal of Doom. So again, removing 2 buffs now rather than 1. And then lastly, increases healing by 20%. A lot of people mistaken the twins for just healers. They are absolute damage dealers and can do it all, okay? So that is hero number 2. And then Valkyrie, so I'm going to do a toss-up. It's between Valkyrie and Mech Armor. And I love Mech Armor, and I explain why. A lot of people sleep on him. A lot of people ate him as food. I have no idea why, because he's a bunny in an armor suit. But, okay, so what makes Valkyrie so magnificent is the fact that she has a 100% buff or 100% stun if nobody has a debuff on them. So you want to make Valkyrie actually be the fastest character user in your lineup if you plan to run her. She inflicts 222% on a roll with the most targets, so she can destroy T formations, absolutely like demolish them. But not only that, but if nobody has a debuff, she applies 100% stun to that unit. There's no percentage there because it's 100%. Unless that person has CC reduction or resistance, that they have a chance to escape this, obviously because the percentage gets lowered, but it is at 100, okay? Her second skill is so good. If you put her and Marlock together in a team, your damage dealers their damage will skyrocket, right? There's a 100% chance to apply Divine Power effect on all heroes, increasing damage by 15% for 3 rounds, and it can stack up to 3 times, guys. So you guys can get quite a bit out of that, by 45% by the 3rd time it stacks. 40 and 80, of course, for HP and attack. And then lastly, right over here, she increases her damage by 10%. And when using her rage skill, if there's any negative effect to the target, then inflict damage equal to 100% of her attack. So now it increases. Instead of a stun, now you're doing 100% plus 222%. So 322% damage now instead. So absolute juggernaut of a unit. Can take damage, can dish out damage, can stun, and can buff your team. Nothing to sleep on. She's an absolute beast. But I want to go to Mech Warrior here for a sec. Armored Mech Omega is something that not a lot of people put a lot of focus on, and it kind of throws me off on why. The reason why it's so good is because number one, it has something called complete block, and this is such a unique move. It blocks all rage skills coming through for 1 round, and then after it shatters, the energy shield will grant 20% damage reduction. So this tank will stop all ultimates coming in. And the reason why that's important, as I'll explain to you, the second move here, the last move here, I'm going to jump over the last move, is they have something called Preemptive Strike. Okay, so Omega's a 10% reduction to itself, but there's a 50% chance to gain Preemptive Strike. Can be triggered once during battle, usually the first time. And what that does is essentially bypass everyone's speed and makes him go first, which means his shield block goes up right away and he starts devouring everyone's rage skills. Okay, and then after he absorbs the rage skill, it becomes enhanced energy cannon, basic attack, except counterattack could also attack the row with the most enemies, and that is a lot of damage, guys. A lot of people sleep on that, but he does a ton of damage when it comes through with that cannon. So the cool thing about Preemptive Strike, it says can be chance 50%, but if you do Potential Awakening, when you get down to right over here, the second one, preemptive attack becomes 100%. All right, so it makes it even crazier. And then the second skill, Omega restores 10% of all of his max HP and is immune to crowd control. You can't, like, this effect is immune to crowd control, so which means you can't actually do heal reduction on it. So every single round, this man recovers 10% HP. If you give him Bandage as a talisman skill, that's an extra 10% HP there, so now you're at 20% HP, and then if you do a Potential Awakening, he does 15% instead, so you can get up to 25. So 25% of your max HP being recovered every round as a tank is nothing to scoff at. That is a lot of HP. So this unit here is not one you want to sleep on, guys. Barely ever dies if built correctly. Excuse me. Keeps your units alive for a very long time and is a absolute beast when it comes down to tanking. So if you ever want to build a unique tank, if you don't have Dragon Master and you want to go all light and dark, don't sleep on him. He's probably the best tank out of anybody in that list. Okay, all right, guys. So those are pretty much it. I'm gonna move on now to Swordmaster's pretty good, Guardian pretty good, but again, they're niche characters. I won't talk much about them. We'll talk about them on the tier list when it comes up. All right, jumping on to Dark, guys. There's a lot of good options in Dark. All right, a lot of good options, and now with the addition of Lunar Shadow, they now have a viable tank as well, which they were lacking. Well, no, they weren't lacking a viable tank. They have a good damage dealer tank off tank. Sorry, I should say that because the Malicious Puppet was actually a really good tank. So let's go with the top 3 here. Some of you may hate me for this, some of you may love me for this. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna go ahead and jump on to the first one, and that's going to be Anubis. So Anubis here, the Educator. Very similar to Grail with an AoE stun, right? So you can see here it does 131% attack, exact same 26% chance to stun, nothing changes there. The difference here is he provides Curse. Now, Curse is unique in the fact that after 3 rounds it inflicts 100% of his attack to that damage dealer, but the problem I have with Curse is a lot of the times it only lasts 1 time because most matches end after 3 or 4 or 5 rounds, right? They never really hit 6 or 7 or 8, at least in my case. It also has a 100% chance to purify a negative effect on himself, so that's really cool. Takes away debuffs off of himself. Of course, the 40 and 80, and then lastly, increases damage by 10%. And while using his raid skill, he dispels 2 random buffs from the target and applies Curse instead. So that's pretty crazy. So if you're running someone like Marlock who loves to buff, or other units like Valkyrie that love to buff, or just Goddesses that love to buff, this unit here will actually remove 2 random buffs from the target and apply Curse. So that's really cool. An awesome unit. Love the design, by the way. Has a really cool skin as well too, right over here, which I think is one of the most unique things I've ever seen. That looks so badass, man. But anyway, so that's definitely one I wouldn't sleep on. The first unit though, out of all the Dark units, Lilith, for sure. Like, the first unit I would focus on is Lilith, because she does all debuffs, including the kitchen sink. If you look over here, Lilith is good at swinging her whip. She does an AoE 131% and 100% chance to inflict Curse, DK, Aging, Heal Reduction. And then when you get her Awakening, she also adds Weaken or Shredded Armor to that list, making her debuffs just absolutely crazy. So Lilith is the best dark unit still in the game, in my opinion. There's no one like her out there, so she should be your number one focus, quite honestly. All right, so here we go. You have a chance to also gain Frenzy, which recover HP equal to 20% of damage inflicted. So this is a really cool thing that she provides other heroes. And then of course the 40 and 80. And then lastly, she has the ability to increase her own damage boost, but then common attacks have a 20% chance to seduce enemies. And that is essentially cannot use active skills for each action, use basic attack to inflict damage on other enemies. So they pretty much attack their own allies. So Lilith, guys, for sure should be your number one focus as a dark unit. I don't think there's anything else out there that can touch her. And then lastly, so dark has a lot of good units. If you're looking for a good tank, Malicious Puppet is very unique, and I'm going to focus on him first because he does something called Soulbound, which doesn't allow units to revive after 4 rounds of being inflicted damage, which is really cool. So if you're fighting people who use a lot of rezzers, he's going to be the anti-res unit right now, okay? So single target damage after 4. If a hero dies within 4 rounds, then it cannot be resurrected. This effect lasts until the end of the round and cannot be purified. So that's awesome for that. He also does Cursed Soul, which essentially is something that he puts on an opponent, and after the rounds are over, he heals all allies for 3% plus 5% of the Cursed Soul of his max HP. Again, no crowd control, and that can be done like heal reduction or anything. That's a standard move that can't be changed. 80 and 40% for him there. And then of course he has the ability to do damage reduction on himself. When attacked, there's a 60% chance he'll land Curse on the unit, which we talked about earlier. And then when entering battle, he reduces 25% damage of a hero with the highest attack for 1 round, making the rage skills hit like wet noodles. So really, really, really good tank. Highly recommend him. And then lastly, guys, so I did 3 there. Best single target damage dealer in the game, hands down. You can go through him, but if you look at his percentages, they're absolutely crazy. 500% attack and true damage, 360% damage if the person does not have a curse, but his potential allows him to do his own curse before he does this ultimate, so he's always hitting 500% of true damage, which is extremely, extremely high. He has CC immunity just like Dragon Princess. The only difference with him is he has a 100% chance to increase his own crit and crit damage, which are the buffs you want as a damage dealer, and then 80 and 40, and then lastly he has lifesteal and then silence. Okay, so hands down, bar none, the best damage dealing single target unit in the game is a Sinister Dragon. So if you want somebody who's a good damage dealer for single targets, he's the one to go for sure. Lilith should still be your main go-to, but amazing. All right, so Lunar Shadow just came out. I did a whole video on her. Go check it out. I'm not going to bother talking about her. She's great, but she does have some flaws. So you can check out the video, like a full breakdown of the video. And then lastly, a lot of people are going to hate me for this. Blade of Shadow is amazingly good character. She's just undertuned for me. As an assassin, I expect you to be doing way more damage. She doesn't do enough damage for me compared to the rest of the assassins or people on my team, but she does have a couple of unique things I want to talk about. She does apply Curse. She does have a 360% chance of hitting the person with the lowest HP, which I love. So Endless Storm, again, very similar to that, right? And then she has something that she can do Weaken and Shred It, and then she has Stealth. Stealth is really, really good in this game because it allows you to bypass all damage, including AoE. So all AoEs will just not even hit her. She'll just stay stealth mode until the effect is over. And then of course lastly, when she launches a fatal attack from the shadows, gains 10% damage increase, and then basic attacks have a 50% chance to stun. And why that's so unique is because she attacks people with the lowest HP. So good unit, just a little undertuned. And then lastly, guys, Morian, if you haven't seen my video, go check it out. I did a full 12-star Morian video showcase, and yeah, easily the best character in the game. There's no one like her, so I'm not even going to bother talking about this, but there you have it, guys. Those are the top units within each element. I hope this video helped. It's not a tier list by any means, but it will give you a little bit of focus on what you should be putting your resources time into. If this video helped, give it a like, subscribe. I hope I see you guys in the next video. This is Payne. Have a wonderful night. Peace.